You can have the perfect credit score for $0. Number one, payment history accounts for 35% of the FICO score, which we already know. And surprisingly, they saw that those people with an 850 score basically have no reported history of missed payments, collections, or derogatory information. You can have the perfect credit score for $0. In this video, we're going to break down what the highest credit score you can have, what you need to do to get there, and some things that you may think are holding you back that aren't holding you back at all. Let's get right into it. Number one is open accounts. How many accounts do you need to have open in order to get an 850 credit score? You need to have at least 5 to 7 accounts, and that needs to be preferably a mix of accounts. Okay, so now a mix of accounts essentially means that you have two different types of accounts on your credit report. Okay, you have revolving accounts and then you have installment accounts. Revolving accounts are accounts that always change. Essentially, they revolve because what you may owe or what the balances may be will change. Those are typically credit cards, are those type of accounts. Then you have installment accounts. Those are accounts that end in the word loan. Okay, so for example, mortgage loan, student loan, personal loan, auto loan, all of those are installment accounts because essentially you're paying the balance in installments. Okay, so when you actually have on your credit report and you need to have 5 to 7 accounts, essentially this is just assuming you're going through the natural normal process of life, living in America, I should say, which you end up getting a car note, you end up getting some type of loan, whether it's a student loan, personal loan, mortgage loan, or something like that. Now, do you have to have a loan in order to get to 850? Not at all. You can actually get there with just credit cards. However, preferably is looking for a mix, okay, of revolving and installment. So it doesn't hurt to have an auto loan, a mortgage loan, but I don't want you to think you have to stop what you're doing in order to go get that. Okay, quick, if you're looking for a way to improve your credit score, we can take a look at your credit report and create a custom game plan for you so you can improve your credit score and get closer to your credit goals. You can click the link in the description below to learn more. However, we have seen people have an 850 credit score, as a matter of fact, as young as 24, without necessarily having to have a loan. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But what's really going to hold that foundation is going to be number two, and that's going to be how long you've had those accounts open. You need to have an average age of accounts of 8 to 11 years. So that means that if you've been only building credit for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever, it has to look at what are those average age of accounts. Did you have bankruptcies back in the day, rebuilt your credit, and now accounts are only 5 years old because of that? Or are you just starting to build credit? Either way, you need to have an average age of accounts of 8 to 11 years, which means you have to keep your accounts open. In order to keep your accounts open, that means you're using those accounts. That means you're keeping your balances low. That means you are actually showing banks and the algorithm that you're trying to get to this 850 score. Number three is going to be payment history. Okay, most of the payment history on your credit report needs to be at least 98%. That means that if there was a missed payment, that means it happened long time ago. Okay, see, here's the thing that people forget about credit. Whether you have something good that happens, whether you have something bad that happens, it only stays on your credit report for 7 years. Okay, and unless it's a bankruptcy, which is a chapter 7, that stays on your credit report for 10 years. Okay, so that doesn't also mean that that can't keep you from an 850 credit score. You need to understand that whether it's good or bad, as it gets closer to that 7-year mark, that's when it's not going to have much value, much of a weight on your credit score. Okay, so again, if you have flawless payment history with an old credit card that you closed out years ago, as all of that payment history gets closer to 7 years, it has a lower value on your credit score. So as you are building your credit, you want to make sure that you're still using that credit, because again, the algorithm is going to be looking for that as well. Now, something that might be uncommon is that a lot of people think that you don't have to have any debts to be at an 850. It's actually the other way around. You don't have to have debt, but if you're still using your credit cards a certain type of way, again, banks are looking for you to have some sort of a balance. If for those who don't know, your credit score can actually be higher, not higher than 850, but essentially your credit score can be a little bit higher if you don't have a zero balance on your credit card. So even if you're using essentially around 7% ideally, but about 10 at the max, 7 to 10% of utilization, let's say for example, if you have a $1,000 credit card, so 7% of that would just be $70. 10% of that would be $100. So you guys get the math. You need to be using that just a little bit. So that's number one. But let's actually see the full list of things that people think are holding them back from a perfect credit score that is simply not doing so. Now, this is directly from FICO, and they're saying that if you happen to have a higher achiever personality and are focused on improving your good credit score to the perfect credit score, which is having an 850 FICO score, here are some credit behavioral characteristics that were observed on a population of people that had an 850 FICO score back in 2019, okay? Number one, payment history accounts for 35% of the FICO score, which we already know. And surprisingly, they saw that those people with an 850 score basically have no reported history of missed payments, collections, or derogatory information. Number two, many people assume that in order to get an 850, you should have no credit debt. In fact, and perhaps somewhat surprisingly to some, we saw that the 850 profile has and uses credit with an average credit balance of around 13,000, okay, reported. And that doesn't include any mortgages, okay? So that includes, credit card payments, auto loan payments, and, things of that sort. And with their average revolving credit utilization tends to be relatively low compared to their available credit at about 4.1%. So many of these people are even under 7% of their available limits. Now, another way to think about that or to look at that in general is, after building credit for so many years, your limits are going to go up. And as your limits go up, the problem is that sometimes people have their balances keep up with their limits. You don't want to do that, obviously. You want to have access to a lot, but only using a very small portion. Next, most have a very established credit history with an average age of their oldest account being 30 years old, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be 30 years old, guys. Again, you just need that minimum of 8 to 11 years. But again, the older, the better, because this is going to play a role in your average age of history. Next, they are all not immune to seeking and opening new credit. About 10% of people that had an 850 credit score had one or more increase in the past year, and about a fourth of them had opened one or more new accounts in the past year as well. So not only do we think that they had no debt, but people actually have debt that are in the 850 scores. Now, we're not saying that that's the end all be all, but again, just honestly living in America, if you are essentially borrowing money, which you don't have to do all the time, but if you get a house, if you have a car note, if you have credit cards, if you have even having them on auto pay, again, you are essentially just making sure that you have access to a lot and you're using less than what you actually have access to. Actually, I was surprised when I saw this too. I'm going to show you all the top 5 states with the highest credit scores. So you guys can see here, now they actually did this poll from April 2023 to April 2018 to April 2023, okay? As you can see here, Connecticut was always at the top, as far as April 2023 goes, okay? As you can see here in April 2013, Connecticut was at the top, where over 1.3% of their population actually had credit scores of 850 and higher. And Hawaii had the exact same percentage, followed by New Jersey, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, ending at 1.13%. Now, in April 2018, Hawaii took over completely, ended up being at 2.41%. I'm just assuming this because it could be a lot of retirees out there, or it could just be, where it's not the common thing to keep borrowing money, okay? But either way, Connecticut followed up in number 2, then New Jersey, New Hampshire, and surprisingly, Minnesota made the list, all right? Then you have April 2023, where Hawaii just took over completely at 2.62% of their population having an 850 score, followed by New Jersey finally moving up the list, Minnesota up the list, Massachusetts, and pushing Connecticut all the way down to 2.32%. Now, the question is, why do you all think so many people, or why has there been such a huge increase in people having higher scores? I think there's a couple different things. Number one, the information, the education that's out there. I mean, you guys are watching this video now, learning how to get there, right? But at the same time, that type of information, it was out there back then, but I think more people, it's more common to watch a YouTube video, to research the information. People see the importance of this as well compared to 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, technically, for 2013. So that's just more so people caring more about the information and actually looking the information up. Number two, a lot of people have been doing a lot of crafty things to improve their credit score. And of course, we've also had the algorithm helping us out too. The ability to report rent now is okay. Where again, 11 years ago, you couldn't do that, okay? Credit builders, those were not out back then. So a lot of those things play a role, as well as, of course, quick ways to do it. Like, trying to get getting a trade loan or being added as an authorized user to someone's credit card, whether you know them or not, okay, and getting that history added to your credit report, that plays a role as well. So I think that, again, the education, people truly honestly care about not just necessarily getting to 850 per se, but just improving their scores overall, okay? And of course, if you like this video, you're most definitely going to love the next one, and I'll see you there.